and make it. That's what they call it. We're going to make it.
Do people make it anymore?
No, I think people maybe made it for 1 year in the 1980s.
But now, in the last few years of the 20th century, the visitor was returning.
So this week on Midnight Local, we are talking about Night of the Comet, which I really like this movie quite a lot.
I love this movie. I think this is a great movie. We're getting into spooky season, so we should be talking about our favorite Halloween-y movies. Right off the top, let's do a little housekeeping, as I like to say. Let's postulate a list of spooky season movies that we might cover in spooky season, so that the audience can weigh in when we release this, and maybe some of that stuff will affect which ones we cover.
Oh, nice. You know, one that you always call a horror movie that I think we should do. What about Bob?
I don't know if that's one. That movie is so upsetting to me. I don't know if I can handle that. Oh boy.
I think it'd be a great one to talk
We've
about.
already done one of my favorite movies of all time, Return of the Living Dead, so we have to cut that one from our possible list up. I would love to do Elvira with you, Mistress of the Dark.
Elvira would be great. I've never seen it. I'm
absolutely
very aware
not
of the
a horror
character.
movie, just a spooky movie.
But that's fine. It's spooky season, not horror season.
Yeah.
I think Night of the Living Dead, like going back to the original and talking through.
It's a great movie. I would do it. I feel like we wouldn't have a lot. We might want to have a second movie in there because I think that we would run out of stuff to talk about.
Well, you think? I think that movie is. There's entire books written on it. I think there's a ton to talk about.
This is true.
Yeah, I loved that movie when I watched it.
Boy, if I could get you a way to see Island of Lost Souls, a pre-code movie from 1934 that I think is one of the most unsettling horror movies of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know why, boy. It hits me hard. It's a weird one. It's an adaptation of The Island of Dr. Moreau. Halloween movie that everybody our generation loves, Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus, which we haven't covered. That I feel like would be tough to have a lot to talk about just because like it's beloved, it's nostalgic. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's worth it.
You put it up with Ernest Scared Stupid, one episode.
Yeah. I wonder, so every year Ray and I do, well, so far it's been slashers. We take one of the slashers and watch it all the way throughout Halloween season. Our first one we did was Halloween. We watched all the Halloween movies. Then we did all of the Freddy movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And then last year we did Friday the 13th, all the Jason movies.
Great. Fun
covering
stuff.
I wonder if an episode on the first of all of those series is and just talk about them all.
They're all actually good movies. They're all really good. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, fantastic movies.
So that was my favorite series so far. This year, I think the Freddy movies as a whole, as a franchise.
The Nightmare on Elm Street movie?
Yeah, 100%. He is the most interesting, repeatable character. Halloween gets just so tedious.
My wife, like her and her friends used to watch horror movies in high school, and I was not really. Oh, sorry, Evil Dead, 1 or 2, top, super awesome to do. But she was not really big on horror. I was not really actually big on horror movies as a kid. And now I'm going to start thinking about all the horror movies that I loved, and it's like, yeah, no, I kind of was. But I just missed Halloween, and we rewatched it last year, I think, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
I'm not that into Halloween.
Yeah. But interesting to talk. I think those are the biggest 3 slashers.
Yeah, probably of what you would call a slasher in that 70s, 80s context. I'm thinking now also about The Thing. The Thing have you ever seen The Thing?
Mm-mm.
Oh shit, that's a good one.
Yeah.
They Live, which is not a horror movie. Also, why can't I think of his name? I know every time I say why can't I think of their name, audience, the answer is I have a proper noun aphasia. I've got a problem in my brain where I can't get the names. That director, Carpenter, John Carpenter. The Thing and They Live are both phenomenal. They Live is weirdly, it's funny. The theme of The Live is consumerism will kill you. And the theme of The Live is, it's really hard to find this on a streaming platform. Huh.
Is The Live in the 80s?
They Live?
Yeah.
They're both 80s flicks, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of horror themes in the 80s were consumerism will kill you.
Yeah. I think that's, it was the Reagan era. Horror is always a reaction to what's going on. Actually, what is it? Where does the second Dawn of the Dead take place? In the shopping mall.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and that's so many shopping hall horror movies in the 80s.
Chopping Mall. Have you seen Chopping Mall?
No, there is a movie.
Don't waste your time. It sucks. It's about robots killing people in a shopping
no,
mall.
I've seen it. I have seen that, actually.
Movie sucks.
I didn't know that was the title, but I've definitely seen it. We could do a whole shopping mall horror movie episode, honestly.
Actually, that brings us to Night of the
It does
Comet.
bring us to Night of the Comet.
No, I was gonna say though, you know what you probably haven't gotten into my wife. I always people to dear audience, if you want to know why I'm always saying my wife, my wife.
Besides Borat.
No, I hate Borat. I don't have anything against Borat. I hate people who quote Borat. So when I say my wife, I'm
You're
doing
not
it to
quoting
make
Borat.
fun of people who quote Borat.
Got it. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, there are. I have inside jokes that are only inside my head.
Yeah. You're going through a whole process there.
Yeah, and they probably make me look stupid. I have layers and layers and layers of the exhibit. I saw that you liked blank dog, so I put blank in your blank so you can blank while you blank dog joke. Do you know you didn't watch Pimp My Ride?
Completely lost right now.
Oh, you didn't watch Pimp My Ride on MTV?
No, I didn't have cable growing up.
Me either, but in high school I did. When I was in grade school I didn't. But yeah, Pimp My Ride, exhibit, host the show. You bring him in your car and he would pimp it, and they would put TVs and stuff in it. And at some point in the episode, he would be like, yo, dog, I heard you like Gran Turismo, so I put a PlayStation in your trunk so you could play Gran Turismo while you're in your car, or something like, I mean, it was just like very... Like, I heard you liked this, so I jammed it into this other thing so that you could do that while you do this other unrelated thing. It's like, I don't know why.
Are you still explaining why you say my wife?
No. Well, yeah, but kind of.
Okay.
No,
Take us
but
home, Greg.
Did you ever get into like Italian horror movies at all? Like the
Yes, I had my Italian horror phase between ages 25 and 32.
My wife and I got into them for a long time. It's all we were watching. There's like a whole genre there. Sometimes you call them. Some of them are giallo films. They're usually like they're usually slashers. There's usually just a murderer with a knife who's after girls. Sometimes the girls are the killer, or those are killer girl. I don't know if that qualifies as giallo, or it may or may not. There's like a lot of different subgenres. Like I one time referred to Suspiria as a giallo movie, and I guess it is not technically a giallo movie, although like you would, I think, as an American, be forgiven for lumping them into each other. Suspiria would be a good one on the list. It's a Dario Argento film.
Oh yeah, okay.
About a coven of witches.
Yeah.
I'll say less. It was remade, and I think horribly, but that's my own personal opinion.
Well, we've given the audience a lot to comment on, so let us know.
Or your favorite horror film.
Yeah, I have to put out this one
or
first
Halloween
in this
movie.
next series of 3. Yeah. Should we cover Silence of the Lambs?
Oh, that would be interesting. What if we covered Silence of the Lambs, a great film from 1991? Gee whiz. I wonder if we'll have anything to talk about in that one. You see, the secret is that we've just recorded it.
All right, so you were going to do my wife, but we were leading also from consumerism in the 80s movies to the movie we're talking about today, which I don't know if we've revealed yet. Oh, no, we did. We said it.
Night of the Comet. I fucking love this movie so much. It is so cool and fun.
Cool and fun. Agreed.
And here's a great thing for me. This movie follows its own internal rules.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, where does it leap? Because I think we set up our...
It doesn't leap. I'm just not clear on... the one big hanging question that I have while watching this movie is, why do some people turn into dust and why do some people turn into zombies? Do you have an answer for that?
Yes. Why do some people turn into dust and some people turn into zombies? Yeah, I think the movie actually does speak to that rather directly.
It does.
So
I didn't catch it if it did.
It's dumb why, but the movie does answer why. Like, okay, fine, you've got rules. I get it. Like if you give me the rules, I don't really care how stupid they are as long as you play by them. Okay. So let's set this up. We start out. It's New Year's Eve in California, I think, or
in the Valley.
In the Valley. Yeah. Right. That's right. That's specific because she's a Valley girl.
Yes.
What's her name? Regina?
Regina, played by Catherine Mary Stewart.
Catherine Mary Stewart plays Regina. She works at a movie theater with her boyfriend. They're going to stay the night in the movie theater together, as teens are wont to do.
She has all the top scores in the Atari arcade game.
No. I think she was playing Tempest, which is a really...
Isn't that an Atari thing?
Oh, it may or may not have been made by Atari. I don't know. I'm just thinking that the game specifically is Tempest,
Is
which
Tempest,
is a cool
yes.
game. And no, that's not actually true. She is annoyed to find that the initials DMK have the 6th highest score on the theater's Tempest video game.
She's just knocked out like the 3rd highest score and then noticed. Yeah, exactly.
All of the others are hers, but DMK is gaining on her score.
Yes.
So yeah, that's like that is a small thing that comes back at the very end of the movie. It doesn't really matter at all.
Well,
hate when there's this idea that like, why is that in the movie? Does that add to anything in the movie? Does that tell us, does that move the plot? No, get rid of it. It's got to be lean. It's got to be lean. Well, there's stuff about establishing character. There are moments in which the characters just live to become those characters. I think you need those things, and I think you need little ideas and plot points that go nowhere because that's how life is.
It also
Things
makes
don't happen.
It also makes her something other than a Valley girl.
Yeah, she's also a gamer.
She's not what you're led to expect immediately.
Especially in 1984, competition over the high score in video games would have definitely been the domain of men, in my opinion.
I think so too. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a
that was a
very
boys' club.
poignant plot point.
They're going to stay overnight because her boyfriend is the projectionist. He can't get locked out. He needs to stay in the theater so it doesn't get locked because he wants to lend a friend a copy of the movie they're showing so that they can make a duplicate of it illegally for a little money on the side. And hey, baby, you and me are going to sleep on the floor of our projection booth together. Hot stuff.
And make it. That's what they call it. We're going to make it.
Do people make it anymore?
No, I think people maybe made it for 1 year in the 1980s.
I mean, I've heard that
more.
expression
Still?
in films of that time frame.
Yeah, right. In films of that time frame.
I think that people make it in Meatballs. People are always making it in summer camp sex romps, I think.
Sure, that makes sense.
That's where you got to make it at summer camp. You got to make it.
Maybe they make it in Jason movies. We'll go back and find out.
Good way to get killed in those movies.
Summer camp, summer camp.
I think that they might make it in Greece. There might be making it that happens. You ever make in the woods?
Make in the woods. Is that different from making
Yeah,
it? Or
very
is it
much
just
so.
making it in the woods?
Yeah, I had to make. It's a very old school New York, and dare I say even New York Jewish expression for going to the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very different.
Hey, I gotta go. I gotta make. I'll be back in a minute.
For years, I went down with a college buddy of ours to a piece of yellow brick road on the top of a mountain in North Carolina called
sure
Land
did.
of Oz.
You sure
and
did.
Everyone down there, every year, I would have to readjust to people saying, "Do you want to get your picture made with Dorothy and Toto? Get your picture made."
What state was that in?
North Carolina.
What part of North Carolina?
Well, Appalachia, because
I was gonna say
right by
because
Appalachia State.
that's a deep accent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was say, yeah. If you're like that's not an accent you're gonna hear in the cities for sure.
Yeah. It's Beach Mountain, a beautiful place. I can't wait to get back there. He's still working at that place. Oh, I can't wait to get back there.
He is. He like runs it now.
Yeah,
He's the man.
check it out. Land of Oz. It's a cool thing to look into. And no, it's not abandoned. There are all these articles about it being an abandoned theme park. It is not abandoned. Set the record straight.
No,
okay, so we were on...
There's a big comet coming through.
Yes.
It's the night of the comet. The Earth is going to pass through the tail of a comet. Mm-hmm. And if you're up on your Night of the Living Dead, which we were just mentioning, that is why the zombies show up in Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. They also are like postulating in the movie that it's like the last time it happened was when all the dinosaurs suddenly disappeared. So there is a group of people that are very concerned about what's about to happen, a group of survivalists that they kind of dip your toe into at this point in the movie.
Not since the time that the dinosaurs disappeared, virtually overnight. There were a few who saw this as more than just a coincidence.
Do they introduce the Institute in the opening of the film? Because a lot happens in that movie at the beginning.
I do think they mentioned them. It reminded me a lot. There was a documentary, I meant to look up the name of this before we recorded, about that group of people that went into the dome for like 2 years to see if they could
people.
So it's very reminiscent of that. They have...
not Biodome. Biosphere 2.
Biosphere 2. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. That's a great
I don't think that was the
documentary.
80s, though. I think that was the 90s.
So this would have been before that. Okay. It very much reminded me of that, but
It
I
does,
guess
yeah.
it's not
By
an
the way,
inspiration.
for those of you who are wondering what happened to Biosphere 1, because when we were kids, this went over my head because we were always talking about Biosphere 2. We were like, what happened to the Biosphere 1 experiment? No. You live in the Biosphere 1 experiment. The Earth was Biosphere 1. Biosphere 2 was a thing that they built to do these experiments in. Anyway.
Yeah. 91. You're right.
Yeah, I thought so. Because I remember it being a big deal when I was a kid. We were talking about that in school. But, okay, so you're staying over the night. Meanwhile, her sister is at home with her wicked stepmom and her dad.
No, not her dad. Her dad is gone. Her dad is off in the military or fighting somewhere. She is hooking up with a neighbor under Dad's nose.
That's right. Dad's not around. And it's her stepmom and the neighbor.
And they loved it. They refer back to Dad a lot.
They like Dad.
They like Dad,
but their stepmom is the wicked stepmom, and
she's in control of them because Dad is gone, and she's always holding over their head. I'm gonna tell your father about this, blah blah blah. And they're like, well, what if we tell our father about the guy you're making out with? Is sort of the tenor of that.
Yeah. There's a real like swingers vibe to her party.
Yeah,
it feels like a key party or something. I don't know why that doesn't happen, but it just feels like it.
And it's sort of a shocking moment because she just slaps Samantha across the face.
And
it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, she is not nice.
Yeah, which I guess we'll get into this more later, but because of the low budget nature of this film, eventually they just had her slap her. Like Samantha, the actress, what's the actress? Kelli Maroney wanted her to slap her for real to get like a good reaction out of her.
Yeah, you can take a slap.
So that slap is real.
As a result of the slap, she spends the night in the shed. I don't know why she has nowhere else to go but the fucking shed.
I mean, we know why, but that is
like there's not a friend's house or something.
Because it's important for the plot of the movie.
Yeah. The comet goes through. The next morning, the world is on its head. Because a lot of people have disappeared. They have turned into dust. They're just gone.
It's a pretty slow reveal to that point. Yeah.
Another movie tie-in, Red Dust. There's a poster on the wall for Jean Harlow and Clark Gable's Red Dust. Great movie, pre-code movie I loved. And the red dust is everywhere. These people turn into red dust. Now, if you were behind steel, if you were encased in steel when the comet went by, we find out at some point in the movie, you will not be affected by the effects of the comet.
Well, they have like a weirdly long conversation about what the booth is that they are in, a steel room.
Yes.
And you're like, this has to pay off because there's no reason to be talking about this.
Yeah, it's the a Martyr's projectionist booth from the early days of cinema. I think they call it Martyr projectionist, or I forget the term for it is. But Martyr might be it, actually. But the projection booths back then, because the film was silver nitrate, which is highly explosive, the stuff that the film was printed on, it could start a fire that would not be able to be put out, and it would kill everybody in the theater. So they built the projection booth to be a firebox and have like shutters that would slap shut to lock the projectionist inside so that only the projectionist dies. So the booth is built for that purpose.
I didn't know it was that dark. My goodness.
Yeah. To save everybody else in the theater. So we know that anything as like minimal as a fold together metal shed from Sears,
Yeah.
Man, I can't speak today. From Sears would work, or a suicidal projectionist booth from the 1930s would also work. But if you were in metal, if you were behind steel, you would be okay. And I think that Richard Beltran, who we meet later, was sleeping in his truck or something like that.
Yeah, he was sleeping in the bed of his truck with a girl he picked up.
Yep.
Robert
Beltran. Yeah, not Richard Beltran. And so we find that out. But if you were indoors, you would become a zombie. You got sick. And eventually the zombies would turn to dust.
Oh, those are the people that were indoors. Okay.
Yeah. So there's like 3 layers. If you're outside, fully exposed, dusted.
Most people were, because everyone was waiting for this to come and wanted to see it. Yeah.
And it's New Year's Eve and all that shit.
Yeah.
And then people who were indoors, they would inhale the vapors and slowly turn into a zombie, depending on how exposed they were. Some might turn very quickly. Some take weeks, we find out later, or days at least. And then eventually, they would too turn to dust. I think it is implied, although we never actually see that transition happen. And people who were wrapped in steel, I don't know. I think it specifically says steel.
Yeah.
Those people would be safe from the effects of the comet. So that's to answer your question.
Safe for now. Yeah. It's implied that they just got a lower dose maybe and over time, but that actually proves to not be true. Like, we're throughout the movie, we believe that Samantha, who keeps like itching and it's like about the body drying out, we're very concerned that she is slowly feeling the effects of this.
But it's not. It turns out it was like she was allergic
she gets
to her
this
sweater or
rash when
something.
she gets nervous and when she gets anxious.
That's what it was. And she is great, and they're both great.
Let's to walk back a little bit. Regina leaves the theater, discovers her sister's alive. They hear a broadcast over radio, so they head into the city to check out the radio station. That's where they run into Hector. So there's other people that have survived out there.
Robert Beltran.
Sweetheart, you haven't seen those freaked out zombies running around here?
See, this is the problem with these things. Daddy would have gotten us Uzis.
Daddy would have gotten us Uzis.
Uzis, which was improv. That line was improv.
It's so good.
Because the weapon jammed. Yeah. And that was her reaction to the weapon jamming. And I guess because the movie was so low budget, they were just like, roll with it. If someone says something off the cuff, roll with it. Yeah.
That's better. That is a better
100%.
thing than the gun not jamming.
Yeah, this movie's budgetary restrictions, I think, probably made it a better movie. But anyway, they then reveal this underground group of survivalists, this bunker.
Well, before we get there, to us, we get revealed. The audience reveal.
Yes.
Yeah, we find out there's a bunch of scientists underground. They're experimenting on people. We don't really understand, I think, the nature of their experiment.
No, not at all. We think they're good guys. We think they want to go out and save survivors. And we think, what's her name?
Mary Warrenoff. I don't remember the actress's name, the character's name.
Andrea White, I think.
That might be right. Yeah.
We think she's the asshole because she doesn't want to go out and get these people.
Yeah, she's seeming like a real hard ass.
Yeah, she doesn't think it's worth it. Audrey White. Audrey White is her name.
Yeah. Mary Warrenoff, and I want to point out too, both her and Robert Beltran appear in another movie together called Eating Raoul, which is a great movie. Really like that movie. Very insane movie. But she was a Warhol girl at one time.
She's stunning. She's very striking.
Striking, yes.
Yeah.
She has a very a voice too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's got a real, I don't know, there's a deepness to it. I don't know.
Dr. Carter, I'd just like to say up front, I'm opposed to this.
So there's a phenomenal scene that I'm going to want to revisit where they're at the shopping mall because they decide to go shopping, and it's fantastic. Everything.
Where would you find two teenage girls at the shopping mall?
I could stay in that shopping mall for the whole movie, in my opinion. And then they get picked up by the scientists.
Well, they run into a group of like stock boys who have decided that they now own the shopping mall, and that guy who plays, I'm looking for the
he's
character
wonderful.
name. He is so good.
He's good.
Terrifying. I'm trying to find who this guy is, but people kind of brush through this plot point of the stock boys in the shopping mall.
He's Willie. Ivan E. Roth is the character.
Okay.
Definitely, because if you look at this guy's face.
Yes, this is him.
Oh, he plays a zombie and other things too.
Night of the Creeps, Tales from the Crypt.
So they decide to go after this wonderful scene in which Daddy would have bought us Uzis. They decide, what are we going to do now that the entire world is ours and we're the last people on it? Let's go shopping. And because they're Valley Girls, right? That's right. They're Valley Girls through and through this movie.
The sister Samantha really is. Regina is always kind of set up to be something else.
Well, she's a little more mature. She's older. Samantha's literally a cheerleader.
Yes, literally a cheerleader.
Spends the movie in her cheerleading uniform.
Yes.
And I guess there's no point in beating around the bush. Often cited as the inspiration for Buffy Summers.
Yes, I think a mix of the two of them.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly valid too.
Yeah, there's a scene in the beginning where a zombie is approaching her in the alley, and she kind of warns him. She says, I know how to defend myself. Don't make me fight you. Yeah. And almost that exact scene shows up in an episode of Buffy at some point.
The Stock Boys are a gang of psychotic stock boys.
Just been waiting for their moment to.
I also like the idea that this shopping mall was full of stock boys who come out to stock the shelves all the time.
Well, and what were they sleeping in the back? And that's why
it just
they're okay.
implies to me that they're like shopping mall Oompa Loompas. Like, how does the mall operate? By the stock boys. The boys we keep in the mall. But yeah, somehow the stock boys are in the mall, and they are perfect examples of in the transitional state because they have their brains and wits about them, but they are becoming monsters, zombies. And I think that, you know, I would think that a shopping mall would have enough metal in it to count as a steel structure, but I guess not. It's only partway there. They abduct the girls, and we think that they want to do something with them, that they may have some
It looks like it's
aim.
about to get real bad, yeah.
It gets worse because they're like pleading with them, and he's like, no, we don't care. We're just going to kill you.
Yeah, like, he is the most terrifying villain in this movie by far.
Yeah, just completely irrational.
Yeah.
He's the Joker.
Yeah, he is.
There's no point to anything that they're doing.
He's been stocking the shelves, waiting for his moment to get back at the rich people. And how dare he's now decided that the mall is his, and how dare they come and steal his things?
Yeah, the things he was using, the lingerie.
Yeah, no, but it's his. That's the point.
It's all on the racks and on the shelves. Nothing has been disturbed. It's all there. Yeah, I love your introduction to him when he gets on the PA system. He's like, "Good morning, shoppers," or whatever it is that he says. It's so good. We get a big gunfight because they have their Mac 10s, their Tech 9s, whatever they are. They're machine pistols that are not Uzis, as we are told. They get captured. Do both of them get captured, or does
they're tied together back to back?
Oh yeah, classic setup. Real Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But they're rescued by the doctors, the scientists from their subterranean base.
Yeah, Audrey and the dude that's with her. Yeah.
Yeah, and she delivers some death drug. She captures them. They kill all the stock boys. They go back to the radio station.
Then they take Regina. They fly her away in a helicopter, and they're like, "But your sister's gonna stay here," and she's like, a little too okay with that, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, Mary Warrenov has this whole speech that she gives to Robert Beltran, I think, or maybe even both of them. I forget how that works.
So she gives her an injection, and Samantha falls asleep, and then she kills the other scientist she's with. She shoots him.
She shoots him, does not inject him. Yeah.
No, she shoots him. The injection of Samantha is a show for him, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And then she goes back to the radio station, gives that whole speech to Hector, and then kills herself, injects herself.
Yes.
And actually does kill herself.
She does kill herself. I think I read one time, because I was really into this movie and looking up about it, I'm pretty sure she wrote that speech for her character.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, sure. Why not?
However it works out, nobody except for her died. And I think that in that speech, if I'm not mistaken, she's not saying all of us, all of us down in the pit. We're all going to die in our secret base. And we find out what's going on down there is that they're trying to find people who show immunity to the comet so they can harvest their blood and keep themselves alive. Cure the fact that they've all been contaminated.
And they're also severely creepy about it. Like, they bring in these two kids.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't think we'll get that as much blood out of the two kids. So like, it's okay. You know, we'll still get something out of that. Like, they're so cheery about what they're going to do to these two kids and tell them that they're like going to go see Santa Claus.
Oh, it's brutal. It's so fucked up.
And Regina just looks at them and says that at some point. She's like, you're so fucked up.
I think, too, that, like, you could read that a couple ways, right? Like, because they're in transition, they are becoming zombies. And as we see, the further down that spectrum you go, the more of a sociopath you become until you're a mindless murderer. So maybe that's like, they were okay at one time, and now they're just like, I guess I'll eat this child's blood. I don't know if you're meant to read it that way or not.
I kind of missed that a little bit. So they're not in a steel bunker. They're just in a bunker. So didn't know
I forget who it is, but one of the scientists during the comet broke the seal to let their girlfriend in. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
She says that in the speech, and she says something like not very scientific or something.
Yeah,
like
somebody fucked us whenever the guys did it, and I forget which.
And so Are they collecting blood thinking that will like slow or stop the
I think that they're trying to come
effects?
up with a real cure for themselves, but
Okay.
in the meantime, they're just taking the blood. But I mean, like the lead scientist, by the time we get to the climax, he's got the scary face. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Another Buffy reference where the vampires get the scary face. And
Yeah.
it even kind of looks similar, too, in that transitional
little
moment.
bit, yeah.
But he's getting to the scary face, and we find out that his transition is completing. And Mary and Beltran come back. Beltran, and he is. I don't want to gloss over that. Like, he has a big scene too, where he goes back and confronts like the zombie version of his mother and shit. Like, it's pretty fucked
He doesn't
up.
see his mother. He goes back home. They're all gone, and a kid attacks him, and he has to run away from this kid. Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, but there's pictures. He's going through the house, and
Yeah.
he's realizing his family is gone, and has a moment about that.
It doesn't feel necessary to the film, but it's nice for his character to get that development.
So
I buy that it would happen.
there's a reason he needs to disappear for a while so the girls can disappear
I see.
without
Yes.
him there. So he's close enough to home. He wants to go check on them, which totally makes absolute sense.
It makes
Like, you
perfect
would wanna
sense.
go
Yeah.
see- yeah.
It's
Yeah.
what that character would do. And therefore, I like it because I'm not feeling the hand of the writer move that character out of the scenario so that the girls can disappear, even though that's that's the function it serves. They save the kids. They save Regina, who also saves herself once she's freed. There is much machine gunning and dynamite throwing and massive
Rigging
destruction.
cars with dynamite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, they kill all the fucking zombie scientists and get away. And then truly inherit the earth. It ends. It's a zombie movie with a happy ending. Mary meets a boy.
They have kids. Yeah.
Well, they don't have kids in the movie.
Or
right?
Samantha meets a boy. Well, they have the kids.
Oh wait,
become,
Mary.
like,
I'm sorry. It's Samantha's the younger girl.
Samantha.
That's right. They take the
sister.
kids. They do have those.
They
kids.
have the
yeah.
kids. Yeah. So they're referring to themselves as aunt and uncle, but they're like, she's in the end of the movie, she's in this like housewife dress,
Yes.
and he's dressed, and they're refusing to let the kids walk across the street against the light.
Yes.
They make a very big point out of how they have to recreate civilization, which is why this matters. And
And then it's a good thing they don't, because a car comes speeding through.
yes, exactly. And Samantha meets a boy that she can go off with.
She
and
asks for permission.
She does.
She does look for permission from
She goes,
mom and
they're
dad.
they're like, we don't even know his name. She's like,
That's right.
what's your name? And he tells her. She yells it out. And then they're like, okay. And she gets in the car and goes.
And then,
and-
did you notice the license plate?
DMK. They
DMK.
bring it full circle. So
Full
the person who had the 6th score is still alive. Or I don't know if he's still alive, but because she asks about the car. She's like, I like your car. He says, thanks. I have 23 of them. I think the idea is he's just like collecting these cars. So
Maybe.
whether it's him or it's not him, who knows? Doesn't matter.
I love this movie. It's so much fun. One of the things that makes this movie work so well and wonderful is the comedic timing. It is a comedy, and just like Return of the Living Dead, which is a wonderful horror film as well, and a comedy, but also I think delivers on the existential horror a little bit more than this movie. That movie is
Yeah.
upsetting.
This movie, anytime you get, we were noticing this when we were watching it, anytime you get to a moment where you feel like it's going to be upsetting, the music is so light and like poppy and
Oh,
funny
interesting.
almost
I
that
didn't
it
connect
never lets you feel that moment.
Yeah. Huh. I didn't connect that. Well, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the comedic timing from, in particular, Samantha, I forget the actress's name.
Kelli Maroney.
Kelli Maroney. She kills it in this movie. She
Yeah.
is so good. Without her, I think you could recast a lot of people in this movie. I don't think you could make this movie without her.
No, I agree.
She's the linchpin. She makes it so much fun. It's so much fun. I keep saying that, but there's just like, it's a blast. Watching this movie is fun.
It actually did do quite well for what it was. Like, if we get into some of the like making of the movie,
Yeah.
the budget for this movie was $700,000, which is insane. And it's especially insane when we can get into like how they stretched that budget, because you're talking about like a deserted downtown LA, and it's not computer generated. Like, they were getting up before people went to work in the morning, blocking the streets and taking these shots. A piece of trivia is the 2 cops that were behind her at one point are the cops that were blocking the traffic. They just like threw them into the scene. Which, have you ever at any point in your career had to stand in New York City on a street and politely ask people not to walk by because we're filming a scene?
I have.
You have. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like
I did
it's
exactly
like a coming
that.
of age.
I worked on a video project. I don't know what it was for. I think it was for PlayStation commercials or something, where we were making these plates of city scenes that had to be empty for the entire length of major roads. And so I would be like a mile from the fucking camera and being told block traffic, and I'm like nowhere near a set. So normally when someone blocks traffic, like you can look around and be like, oh, there's a set here and stuff like that. But I was just like, hey guys, I got a walkie-talkie. I'm going to need you to just like keep your car there for about 10 minutes, with nothing
It's
to
like
back me up.
New York City production hazing. This is the job. This is everybody's first job on set, because
Wasn't my first
there's
job,
some
but-
law in New York City about blocking streets. It's like not really something you can fully completely do. So you can't like have the cops come and shut down an entire street.
Well, I think you can do it. It's just really expensive.
Really expensive. So
You can do anything with money.
I did a short film back in the day where we had to do this, and for some reason they decided to shoot, and this is like any no money film, they decided to shoot in front of a hospital. So I'm like asking doctors and nurses, like, please don't cross the street right now.
That
And I was
seems
like, I
a
can't.
serious
It's
risk,
just
actually.
absolutely stupid. But everyone in New York's probably been asked by some like 25-year-old, like, hi, please, can you wait for 5 seconds? And you're always like, absolutely not. I'm walking. Goodbye. Sorry. So I've been on both sides of that. Anyway, so
One time,
what they were able to pull
I was
off.
leaving from work in New York City, and they were using the front door of my office for a scene.
Oh boy.
And they didn't tell me this because this is when I was working as an editor at this little company, and I go downstairs and I was the last person to leave for the day. It was like after hours. I just have to work late. And I walk out the door from the elevator, and I'm standing there, and there's nobody in the lobby. It's a tiny little lobby because like a lot of these buildings don't have like fancy lobbies. There's like, a vestibule. And I'm in the vestibule, and I'm like, why is Will Smith standing right there about like he's about to run? He looks disheveled. There he goes. And then like thankfully that pause catching, is that Will Smith? Okay. Like leaving the vestibule ahead of me was enough time for me to not interrupt the shot. I guess they were filming Unbreakable Beauty or Unspeakable Beauty, some forgotten Will Smith movie. I don't know what it was called. Or whatever.
So what they were able to pull off with a $700K budget, I think, is pretty phenomenal in this movie, because it really doesn't feel like that. It feels like an expensive movie with all of the empty street downtown shots, and there's a lot of them. It's not just a couple. Like there's a lot of scenes. So the movie grossed like 14.4 million, so not a bad return on investment.
That's a pretty great film. Great return. This movie, whoever made this movie loved movies.
Agreed.
There's like a reason why it takes place. It starts in a movie theater. You know what I mean?
Which it's the location is a famous theater.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it was shot at the El Rey movie theater.
The El Rey, the King. Thomas Eberhardt, most noted for his work on Without a Clue, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, and the cult classic Night of the... Not Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. Which is a surprisingly good follow-up to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
It is.
It's better than you might expect. I want to get back to my point about loving movies. Like, we get the reference to Red Dust, the poster. Like, that's a pretty obscure movie to be super familiar with unless you're real into film history. And so we get the Red Dust in there. I think that the underground secret lab place, maybe this is a stretch, it feels like a reference to A Boy and His Dog, which is a 1975 science fiction post-apocalyptic film that's very weird and about a special dog and a young man and their adventures in a post-apocalyptic world. Kind of also a dark comedy. We have there was another movie reference that just came up in my mind. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Was it the Valley Girl record?
Valley Girl record?
Yeah, I think it's a soundtrack. At some point, she takes the soundtrack and throws it, but it was like one of the more popular soundtracks at the time.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's funny. No.
Yeah.
That's a great one. The mall. Going to the mall feels very much like, and with a zombie movie.
The working title for this movie was Teenage Mutant Horror Comet Zombies.
I love that. That's a good name. I think Night of the Comet sells better, but Teenage Mutant Horror Comic Zombies sounds
And
good.
I guess she says it. Oh, yeah. Okay. So Samantha at one point is in the radio station and sort of takes over as the DJ. And she says, to all you Teenage Mutant Comet Zombies.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's how the scientists find them, because they're in the radio station playing around. And she has that great dream about the cops, and they turn out to be zombies as well.
She has like a double dream. She wakes up once and then it's happening again. She wakes up
Have you ever had the dream within a dream?
I don't think so.
It fucking sucks, dude. It is not cool. It will upset you, just like on an existential level, waking up into a dream that you don't know is a dream that's a dream. Hey, dog, I put a dream in your dream because I heard you like to dream while you're dreaming.
Yeah.
Dog.
I don't think I can't remember a time that has happened to me.
I'm going to call it the exhibit dream now. He knows about the sacrificial projectionist booth. He,
Yeah, true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so much in there. I don't know that
the
I have
guy
more to
who's
say
making
about
copies of movies gets murdered. Maybe that's
Yeah.
a little bit of a nod to like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
it. Yeah, because her boyfriend goes outside. He's like, hey, man, what's up? Boom. Killed.
Yeah. He's just like sitting there chowing down on him when she runs into that guy in the alley.
Yeah, she's eating her boyfriend. It's pretty bleak.
But it just seems like another movie that everyone like got the memo. Everyone knew like we've got 700,000. Like they were very aware throughout the movie that they didn't have film to waste. So if someone made a choice in their performance, or if something happened, like the Uzi comment comes because her gun jams. So she reacts to it. And that could have been a moment where everyone starts laughing and it's the end of a scene because, haha, that wasn't supposed to happen. But like they were all in this mindset of if something like that happens, just stick with it. They end up being the best moments.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a choice made here to not necessarily make choices in scene. You know what I mean? Like let the chips fall where they may. And
I don't know if that was always the intention, but it was definitely
I agree.
Understood to go with it if it does happen.
But I think that's what made the movie. Like the choice to not choose is what, even if you do not choose, you still have made a choice. There's you ever see Baby Driver? You ever see Baby Driver?
Yeah, I've seen Baby Driver.
You've seen Baby Driver. But I don't mean Baby Driver. I mean the other one that was like Baby Driver with the Mouseketeer.
Ryan Gosling.
Thank you.
Got
he was a
it.
Mouseketeer. That's not Baby Driver. He's a driver in that movie. The Driver.
Sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
So that was directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, who is Swedish or Norwegian. And if you loved The Driver, and I did, and you go watch Nicholas Winding Refn's other movies thinking, oh boy, I want to see what else he made, you might say, weird. He has very different sensibilities consistently than what I saw in that movie. What happened there? Well, I will tell you. I watched The Driver and was so impressed with it that back in the days of DVD, you could do this. I went back and I watched it again right away with the director's commentary on. I did that a lot. I watched the same movie back to back. Oh, that was good. Let's do it again. Director's commentary, like right away. And so I watched it with the commentary on, and I found out that every single thing that Nicholas Winding Refn wanted for this movie did not happen. Like every casting choice. Like he didn't particularly want Ryan Gosling. But Ryan Gosling took him out to dinner to talk about the movie.
You've told me this story before.
And he was deeply ill. Like he was going to poop his pants. And Gosling had him in the car. He was driving him home because he's the driver. And he was basically just driving around until he agreed to do the movie. And he had to go to the bathroom. Right? He wanted like some very stereotypical casting choices for the girl and her abusive boyfriend in the movie. Didn't get them. You know,
is the movie good?
I think it's fantastic, but I think it's fantastic in spite of its director because it seems like everything he wanted wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So you go look at his other movies where he got what he wanted and you're like, I don't get this appeal. This guy's pretty boring.
Whereas like, I think the actors are on board in this one, but I actually think the director makes this movie because of the budget.
Well, that's what I'm saying is
what
though,
his
like
restrictions were.
He was making all the right choices.
Yeah. Like the bunker. I keep calling it a bunker. There's another. They don't refer to it.
The
Yeah,
underground lab
is all miniatures with forced perspective. Like
You
this
can
guy
kinda
knew
tell that,
how
but-
to. Yeah, but he knew how to make this movie on a budget.
At that budget, I don't mind that it looks like miniatures.
Yeah. It still works. It feels like this huge, vast.
Yeah.
thing. Like, it
It
feels
works.
expensive. It feels very expensive.
The movie definitely feels more expensive than its budget. I think that was more possible in the days of film than it is in the days of HD, of modern cameras. If you think about, like, what does budget cinema look like now, right? You can do great things with a souped up DSLR or whatever. It's not the same thing as renting, I don't know what the top of the state of the art is, but an Arri or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same thing as all of that. It's not the same, like, your audio recording is probably not going to be the same thing that was going on set on a feature film, right? Well, on like a big budget feature film, just for like getting your voice of your actors and stuff like that. Well, you know, when you're shooting on film in the 80s and it's 35 millimeter, you're shooting on the same camera, the same lenses, the same media. You are still recording audio on a Crystal Sync Nagra because you had no other option. That was the only piece of equipment. It's the same machine that they're using on the big boy movies, right? And you're right, like the film grain and everything like that does hide imperfections a little bit more. Whereas modern, like when I look at low budget movies now, and maybe less now, but like, God, at the dawn of HD, like in the mid 2000s, you know, up through 2015 or whatever, low budget movies became unwatchable, I think, compared, you know what I mean? Like, whereas like low budget horror movies from the 80s don't feel that way. You know, the effects were really bad. Like the low
It
budget
hurts them
digital
to not be on
effects
film.
hurt
Like,
them.
really hurts them. Yeah, I agree.
My friends, you know, we're of a gaming generation where we grew up with NES, then SNES, and N64, right? I can play NES and SNES games. I can't stand going back and revisiting Nintendo 64 games, and I come to it like this. Like, the Super Nintendo is the pinnacle of the craft of 16-bit 2D graphics. When the next on a console, that next cycle, you go to N64, you're looking at the absolute basement of 3D 64-bit console graphics. And so like the frame rate is dropping and everything looks like shit and the world is limited, and like it just hurts my, like, physically, some of that makes me nauseous. I can't revisit those games. Even when I was a kid, when we would play 4-screen GoldenEye or whatever, I would always be like, I have a headache. This hurts.
Yeah.
Can we do something else now? Like, the frame rate and the look of it and everything like that was anyway. I don't know what that is, but I think that, like, yeah, like 80s, 70s, 90s, low budget 35 millimeter films, they don't look that low budget. They
Yeah.
just don't. You know, there wasn't that many corners you could really cut. Like, you still had to make the movie. You saved money by getting cheap casts, you know?
Well, and their solves for it are better. Trying to solve things in post is one of the worst things that ever happened to movies.
That's a good point. You could not shoot endless coverage on those movies. You didn't have the budget for it. Now you can shoot endless coverage and then make the edit happen in post.
Yeah, and
really had to know what you wanted to shoot back then.
Yeah, and with the budgetary restriction, even more so. That's even more true.
Were movies just better in the 90s in some way? Or is that rose-tinted glasses? And I have a theory that maybe it's rose-tinted glasses. But if it's not, I think it might be part of this. Other than the production thing, I think that who were the ascendant directors in that time? New Hollywood directors, basically. People who came about post breaking of the code, like Scorsese, Spielberg,
Lucas.
George Lucas, right? But they're all starting their careers after 1968 for the most part, when the code breaks. Who are the directors that they're growing up watching? They're all code directors, right? So they grew up watching a form of cinema that was highly repressed, where there were these really clear guidelines that you had to work around to tell the story that you wanted to. So it was super inventive, right? Like, almost all of them cite The Searchers as one of their most inspirational, most influential films, right? A lot of them. And you see references to The Searchers all over the fucking place. The Searchers is a big budget Hollywood Western made in a time when the subversive Western didn't really exist. It's a John Ford movie. It has all of the hallmarks, like these huge sweeping vistas, these camera moves and everything like that. It's made after World War II. John Ford and John Wayne are still working together. There's a strong argument to be made that at this point in their career, John Ford could not stand John Wayne because he refused to get involved in the war, while John Ford was literally getting bombed shooting documentaries. The Searchers is a movie where if you were young and you watched it, and you weren't John Wayne and you worked on it, you knew that John Wayne's character was the bad guy. If you were old or you were John Wayne, because he argues this point, or he did. You think that he's the good character, right?
Right.
And it's about him hunting down this girl with an intention of killing her, and in the final moment, he decides to rescue her instead of putting her out of her misery.
Which makes him the good guy.
No, but it's like a lot of times I think that these movies from that time period had like a false ending and a true ending. It was like, the movie ends here on this cut, and here is the extra scene I put in to pass the censors, you know?
Sure.
And so they grew up, I think, watching movie where there was coded cinema. Like, you had
Right.
to hide all this stuff in the movie. You had to be really creative to work within the confines of the medium, which wasn't necessarily budget in those, but it was like narrative controls put on you by the state.
Right. And if you're studying that, you can pinpoint where they're doing it and
Exactly.
what they actually mean, and you can pull out the meanings. Yeah.
And because of that and the technical restraints, it was a cinema that was born and schooled on refinement. Okay? But then when you pivot to unlimited footage, unlimited digital footage, you now have cinema that is born and schooled on embellishment. Not less is more is more, right? I just think that that's a big thing that
Right.
is
I wish
pivoted.
it was as intentional as more is more, though. Like that I can understand. I think it's just like directors aren't directors anymore. Editors are directors.
Yeah, and the
And
executive
actors are
producers.
directors. Yeah.
A lot of the budgets are like, I mean, I think there's a classic scene. One of the things that is most annoying to a lot of Star Wars fans is a scene in one of the new Star Wars movies when all of a sudden stormtroopers have jetpacks, and a stormtrooper says, "They fly now! They fly now! That just happened." Everybody hates that dialogue. But the reason that scene is in the movie is because someone decided that we need to sell action figures with jetpacks. We want new stormtroopers with jetpacks. It
Well,
doesn't serve
merchandising
any
is
part of
it
the
too,
story
yeah.
at all. It's like the story is being handled by the executive producer. I think it was, we may have
So
even
you
talked
have
about
to get this in there somehow.
it's going
Yeah.
in the movie. The toy has to exist. Certainly that's been a thing for a while, but I think it's worse now. I mean, you know, if you look at, I think it's like Superman 1 or 2, they really wanted to have Budweiser or some like recognizable brand's truck in the movie. They paid that brand to have it put in the movie. And at some point that changed. The brands
the other
realized
way around,
this is
yeah.
advertising. And now it became a thing. And then it became a thing at one
Well,
point. that was
Reese's
much...
Pieces in E.T. is a famous story of
Exactly
content,
right.
But I think, yeah,
Yeah, because Eminem wouldn't agree.
right, because they thought it was going to be a Close Encounters horror movie. They didn't understand that it was going to be like a kids movie.
Why would it matter? That's what I'm saying. Is it like, why would it matter what kind of movie it is
Because
if your product
because
is in
they're
front of the audience?
Because they're selling candy, I would imagine.
But I guarantee that way of thinking about advertising has completely, that's gone. You just put it in the movie. We want it in front of eyeballs. I don't give a shit. Right.
Yeah. Oh, now, yeah, certainly.
That's
absolutely.
a very much a 1960s, you know, ad men kind of way of thinking about Hollywood.
When was the last time you saw a movie that you thought, I will be watching this in 20 years? My kids will be showing this to their kids.
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a
I don't
different
either.
question than when was the last time I saw a great movie. The last great new movie I saw was American Fiction. I fucking loved that movie. It like restored my faith in cinema. I really dug that movie, but it's not a movie either that I'm going to watch in 20 years with my kids, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe once with my kids. I
But
don't know.
that's what I mean, like a good, fun movie.
Yeah. When was the last time we got a Goonies?
Back to the Future.
What? Oh,
Even Jurassic Park. I'm like listing things that I've recently watched with my nephews, but I mean, even
Ghostbusters,
this
which, by the
movie
way,
too-
Ghostbusters, maybe for the Halloween series.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ghostbusters is a good one. But even this movie, so this movie came out, did really well for the studio. I'm actually surprised by that there's no follow-ups by how well it did.
Yeah.
And then disappears for a number of years, but is having a resurgence as a nostalgia film.
Yep.
Because it's good enough to have a resurgence as a nostalgia
good.
film. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
And I just don't see that happening with a lot of movies that I've seen recently.
I think you're right. I full disclosure, it might be you and me being old.
It might, but like Ray has younger siblings. They don't really watch movies. They're not really into movies.
Yeah.
I don't know what they'll be nostalgic for, but I don't even just think that's because like, oh, their attention spans and blah, blah, blah. I think it's because the movies aren't good.
This has happened before. There's a period like in the 50s that people refer to. Sometimes people call it the golden age of Hollywood, but it's really not. There's like some of the worst movies ever made are from the 50s. And by and large, like we remember the greats, and they were made by like a handful of directors. You know, like Billy Wilder made great movies in the 50s. Yeah, Billy Wilder and Willie Wildman. Oh, you know who made great movies in the 50s? John Ford. You know who they all were? You got to watch Five Came Back, because it's all them.
Okay.
It's the 5 directors who went to fight in World War II with their cameras. Dude, did you know this? Memphis Belle. Great movie from the 80s or 90s. I don't forget when it came out. I loved that movie growing up, The Memphis Belle. Did you like that movie?
Never seen it, no.
What? You're not a boy, but that's okay. It's about the Memphis Belle. It's based on a true story. It's about this B-17. Oh, man, if I'm going to lose my man card if it's not a B-17. But I'm pretty sure it's a B-17 bomber. And their last mission. They had to do 25 missions over Germany, and then you could go home. You were done. You know, it's an adventure. Yeah. You're in this plane the whole time. That was based on
B-17. You're right. You get to keep your man card.
Oh, thank God. I hate the idea of losing my card. I don't know what I would do without it. It's so useful to me. It's based on the fact that I didn't know this growing up, but like William Wyler, famous director, they were making these documentaries for the War Department during World War II. He just grabbed a camera and climbed into a B-17 and was like, take me. He got on the Memphis Belle and went with these guys over Germany, had flak exploding through the thing. He was there, man. He was flying this sortie over Germany with these guys. That doesn't make him a better director. It has nothing to do. I just think that like for some reason, John Huston was another one of these guys who went overseas to make these documentaries.
He also did The Best Years of Our Lives, which is an incredible
movie he came back and made.
Yeah.
I can't bring myself to watch it.
Ever? Have you ever seen it?
It's too much of a bummer for me. I get it, man. I don't need that darkness in my life.
Oh, okay.
But Billy Wilder and William Wyler, gee whiz, do they have similar names?
Yeah.
Wilder and Wyler.
Yeah.
So William Wyler is on a B-17 on the Memphis Belle, documenting their last mission over Germany, and a lot of those guys didn't make it coming out. He knew he got on that plane with a camera that he might die. People were like, he was fucking crazy. John Ford was running around with a camera at the Battle of fucking Midway, getting the shit blown up around him, filming. These guys were nuts. And you know what's really interesting to me? Only one movie was not allowed to be released. A lot of them, some of them got a little bit scrubbed by the War Department. They were like, no, but really, like, we think the public has a right to know. It was a very different culture. And we want you guys to document the war and like show America that what we were doing was the right thing and worth it. They wanted this stuff documented, but there was one movie that John Huston made called There Will Be a Light that they talk about in this documentary. Is the only one that they couldn't release, that they wouldn't let them release. And it was a special hospital. It was about a special hospital that they had built for returning vets who had PTSD. And the army, the military, they didn't want people knowing that PTSD existed.
Yeah.
I think that the idea that like you might come home fine physically, but like killing people might break you. You know, that might not be good for you, even in self-defense. I think that was an idea too upsetting for a lot of people to stomach. And I think that had that movie come out, I honestly wonder if the Vietnam War would have happened. Like when I think about how much cinema had the ability, and probably still does, to control the direction of our society.
I don't think anything still has that power.
I mean,
not like that.
We should do some pre-code movies. I'm sorry. I think we're going to have to go there at some point. But like, if you look at up until 1934, up and through the 30s, how left our country was moving.
Yeah, right.
The Communist
Party.
No, I
understand as a film body, as the code came into, like, how that happened, but a singular movie, a singular piece of media now.
No, I don't know. I'm just saying that like I really truly believe that the vast majority of what we understand, or did until recently understand, to be, quote, American culture, people say, it was invented in the movies. No, I don't think it was invented in the movies. I think that culture mirrored the movies.
Yeah, I think that's still true. I just think that we are much more disjointed in what we consume. So it's impossible to get everybody onto that page. I agree. I think this is a great conversation. I don't think it's a great conversation for an hour and 15 minutes into an episode. I think we should save it
on Night of the Comet.
On Night of the Comet. We ended up in the 80s, an 80s post-apocalyptic zombie movie to the 50s. But I do think we should do some pre-code stuff. I think, like, let's definitely... I think there's more to dive into. I think we have to be more planned about what we watch, what we choose to, like, lead to these conversations. But we definitely should. And we should pick those movies out for post-spooky season.
I think we should just let the chips fall where they may. Take the conversations where they go.
But then, nobody's going to be like, we're starting a whole new episode an hour and 15 minutes into this episode.
You are not allowed to miss an episode of this show. You don't get to pick and choose which ones to listen to based on what sounds interesting. If you want the interesting bits, they're in all the episodes.
I want to talk about this for a while, and I don't want to talk about it for a while now. I think.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Hour and 15 is my limit because I drink a drink. I have a seltzer in every episode, and now I've got to return it from whence it came. So
to put this movie to bed, to make it with this movie. No, to put this movie to bed, I think
love it.
I don't even know where we were when we got off.
I don't either. I don't know either. But what we were talking about is that you could see the director's love of movies. There's so many references.
This was like a half hour ago we came to that conclusion.
No, but you could just, like, there's so many nods and references to other movies.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to some extent, what do you think this movie is about, right? Like, horror movies are always social commentaries. What is this a commentary on?
I think it's still fear of the bomb. I think that it's like a lot of 80s movies have that in it. So I think it has to be mostly that, because that's what the comet is at the end of the day. What if everyone disappeared? It's a rapture movie.
Turning everybody into dust. You know, you always hear about the nuclear bomb turning people into shadows.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, there's consumerism in there. There's all the other sort of 80s themes kind of peppered in. But then it's funny. It's lighthearted. It's a romp.
Is there something in this as well about rejecting or challenging, like, gender norms?
100%. From the get, every scene that you get with her, and even in that, for horror movies, if you're talking about like Friday the 13th and Jason, she has sex in the first 10 minutes of this movie. And it's not a death sentence. Like,
she's making it.
All of the Jason movies are basically like, you have sex, you die.
Yep.
And so that breaks right there. And her playing the video game breaks it. Then she meets the guy in the alley and she beats him up. No one comes in to save her. She does that on her own. Like, Hector comes in at the end, but it's not to save her. They're a team. Like, they're together. They're a group. It's never a damsel in distress story.
Well, I mean, Samantha is the badass.
And her too. Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying, like, it's not Hector so much. Like, Hector's the wheelman. Samantha goes in to save her, right?
Yeah.
Does he even go inside?
I think he does. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
Well, no, he's outside. He's outside rigging all the cars with dynamite. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fun to cover movies like this on the show. I think it's probably a movie a lot of people haven't seen. It's one of the movies that a lot of people haven't seen that I'm hoping we convince you to watch it.
I do too.
Because
I really want you to see this movie.
Yeah, like sometimes we cover movies and it's like, you don't really have to go see it. But this one, it's fun. I think you should go see it. Especially,
so we've spoiled every tick of it. But
we'll put this at the beginning of the episode. Go watch it. Come back to the episode when you're done.
Yeah.
All right. That is Night of the Comet.
All right. You've been listening to Midnight Local, a show about movies and other things. We're Meredith and Greg. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I don't know if we're on those things. Are we on those things?
We are on TikTok. We are on Instagram. We are not on Twitter. I have not been on Twitter in many moons, but we're also not on any
We're not
Twitter
on X
replacement.
Either. Yeah. We're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. That, I would say, like, if you want to see like clips and little added tidbits, that's the place to go to sort of get the full experience.
Yeah.
Not the full experience, a different experience. If you are a visual learner, then go on over to YouTube. If you are in your car driving, then this is the format for you.
And you can get it wherever you get your podcasts.
That's it. The obligatory statement.
End
right.
episode.